So UFC 296 turned out to be a little bit of a dud of a card, but there was some extremely outlandish statements, some absolutely pathetic and embarrassing performances. We're going to talk about the main event being one of the most embarrassing main events I've ever watched. We're going to talk about the master of mind games, Dricus Du Plessis. Not only did he get inside the head of Israel Adesanya and run him out of the division, now he's taking on the current middleweight champion of the world, and it just seems that he cannot put a foot wrong in his run to becoming middleweight champion of the world. We'll run through the other fights as well before we get into it. Hit like, subscribe and share if you can. I appreciate you. Cheers. So as I said, an absolutely crazy card. We started with my guy Bryce Mitchell. He came in there on short notice, fought Josh Emmett. Hard puncher, man, hard puncher. I predicted it before we went in there. I didn't think that Bryce was going to get the job done, and right off the bat he seemed very flat-footed. He seemed to be not closing distance. He seemed to be on the outside way too much and just looked like he was lost at sea. And inevitably the big right hand came. A savage knockout by Josh Emmett. Hate to watch that shit, especially when it's a guy like Bryce Mitchell. And in the aftermath of the fight and after the hospital visit, Bryce Mitchell did a really cool video to Instagram, said, listen, I feel 100% good. Everything was positive this weekend. Game plan was off. Josh is a great guy. I got what I needed to get out of this short notice fight, and that was it, man. It was really positive. Josh Emmett couldn't say a bad word, couldn't celebrate too much, but in the same breath, a really good win for him as well. So that was a bit of a bummer to kick off this card. And as I said, we were led to believe that this was going to be the biggest, most exciting card of the year. And by looking at it on paper, that's what a lot of people were thinking. It didn't really turn out to be that at all. That brought us to Paddy, Pimblett, Tony Ferguson. There was some really good trash talk going on in the press conference the other night. Tony was a little bit strange. Paddy was a little bit subdued. He's been approaching this fight week with a little bit more of a coherent, less outlandish style, trying to reinvent himself, I guess. Maybe it's a PR stunt, maybe it's an organic thing, we don't know, we'll have to see. I really liked the way Paddy was coming into this fight. He was showing massive respect. It wasn't reciprocal. Tony was being weird and a little bit cringe in the press conferences. Paddy kept on trying to be nice, offering respect. He was talking about cutting him up and bloodying him up and all this type of madness. And when Paddy snapped in the press conference, we knew that we were in for a banger of a fight, so he was hyped up. He came out with the brand new haircut. First round was pretty even. Paddy's chin was so high up in the air, it was crazy. I was literally saying it to the lads that I was watching with. I was like, I cannot believe that his chin was so high in the air. Very hittable. They had a nice little back and forth. He was throwing some leg kicks. There was a couple of exchanges that were decent. When Paddy exploded with his flurries, maybe 2 or 3 punches would land, and then 3 or 4 of them would just like veer off all over the octagon. It looked a little bit messy, in fairness. He did jump in with a flying knee, put Tony down. Tony survived. They kind of grappled around. Obviously Paddy was really heavy on top in terms of the grappling. Second round was pretty even. There was a couple of exchanges, and in the third round then Paddy seemed to gas. He seemed to be done, and if it had stayed on the feet, and again, this is all ifs, whats and maybes. If it was a different fighter, if Tony was a little bit more on point, something could have happened in terms of Paddy losing that fight. Kind of infuriating to watch Tony over these last 6 or 7 fights, pretty much his whole career. When his back hits the ground, he seems to accept it, and he seems to rely on the 10th planet jiu-jitsu, and it always seems to be this same type of rubber guard defense, and he seems to rely on it too much. Paddy was way too strong for him, way too versed in grappling. He said about a 2nd degree and a black belt in jiu-jitsu this week. He got the win. Yeah, I think the first round Paddy went for a glove touch. Last round he went for a glove touch. Absolutely nothing. When the bell rang and Paddy was on top, he was there looking for some sort of embrace. Nothing from Tony. He did come over eventually and show a little bit of appreciation with a quick little hug. Boom, bounced. He was gone. Strange performance again from Tony. Pretty happy for Paddy. Hopefully he can build on this, get that chin down and keep going. We know he had that horrific injury. When you hold yourself the way he's held himself this week in terms of respecting his opponent and not being a complete douche, fair enough, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and we'll go on to the next one. That brings us into the Shavkat and Wonderboy fight. Same thing again. Everyone had their money on Shavkat. He went in there and did what we actually thought he was going to do. He was actually a little bit slower off the mark to get going. Wonderboy did decent trying to stuff that takedown. But eventually he just succumbed and got submitted. It was what it was. We knew that it was going to be that sort of a fight. It was a terrible matchup for Wonderboy. And you think of his last bout against Michel Pereira where he missed weight, Wonderboy wouldn't take it, and then we went into this like 2-month fiasco of getting paid, not getting paid. And you kind of have to wonder, was this the UFC saying, okay, listen, you made it a little bit of an issue the last time. You wouldn't fight because the guy was overweight. Fair enough, that's your prerogative. The money issue became a big story. Ariel was talking about it a lot, obviously. Any chance to stick it to the UFC and Dana, he's going to take that. So was it like a punishment to throw him to the wolves, giving him to Shavkat? Who knows, but inevitably Shavkat got the job done, and that was that. In between all that, we had this scenario with Sean Strickland and Dricus Du Plessis. Very, very interesting stuff. Probably worthy of another video, especially given the fact that I think Dricus is literally just smashing it at the moment. In the press conference on Friday night, he got inside the head of Sean Strickland, which I've never seen before. I've never seen Strickland like freak out the way he did the other night. Really lost the plot. And after that press conference, you could tell that Dricus was still in his head, because he jumped online and he started compounding points that he was making about abusive relationships and fathers and sons and all this type of stuff. He really went off on it. I like Strickland. I love what he did against Israel Adesanya, although at this stage you could kind of give the credit for that win to Dricus, just for getting inside Israel Adesanya's head during that face-off, because after that, as we know, Israel Adesanya was never the same guy and probably never will be. And after the press conference Friday night, Dricus got in his face, started talking minimal shit, and that was it. And that brought us then to the brawl last night, as we all saw. It's all over the internet. We see Sean Strickland and Dricus standing really close to each other, which was pretty precarious in terms of seating arrangements. They show up on camera, they're giving a little bit of banter back and forth, and then Sean Strickland asks Gilbert Burns' kids, sorry, could you move out of the way? And then he jumps up and starts trying to throw punches and elbows. And he got taken down pretty easily and ended up on the bottom and didn't make his way up off the ground for maybe 5 minutes. And that's pretty indicative of where this fight will actually go once they get into the octagon next month. Just another win for Dricus Du Plessis. I mean, this guy is literally smashing it out of the park. In terms of Sean Strickland, I'm probably going to do a video this week on Sean Strickland, because I love 50-60% of the stuff that he says, but a lot of his stuff seems to be hit and miss in terms of actually understanding the nuances of inflation or Middle Eastern wars, all these things that he keeps chirping about. So there's a lot of bad takes there. Like, you talk a mountain of shit towards Paddy Pimblett, call him all these derogatory words over and over again, and then you see him and you definitely don't have the same energy. You're shaking hands and you're all like chatty. So in terms of outlandish statements and crazy shit talk gone wrong, we saw it there last night with Sean Strickland. He ended up on his back on the ground. And as the middleweight champion of the world on the last pay-per-view event of the year, I'm not sure whether Dana's going to be happy with him. Dricus can't put a foot wrong. He's already gotten inside the head of the last middleweight champion and ran him out of the division. And it looks like he's going to do the same to Sean Strickland. And you love to see it. So that brings us to the Pantoja Royval fight. Wasn't really interested for it. They got in there. They started going at it. It looked like it was in fast forward for the first 2 or 3 rounds. Pantoja started to tank. I think if it had stayed on the feet in the 5th and 6th round a little bit more, we would have seen Royval become the champion. Unfortunately, the grappling was just too much by Pantoja. Kept mounting him, kept getting on top of him, was extremely good at just laying there on top of him, not allowing him to get up, and retained his belt. It was what it was. That fight kicked off in fast forward mode, and by the time we got to the end of it, it was just like, okay, there's a lot of lying down going on here, like, you know what I mean? And so that brings us to the Colby Covington Leon Edwards title fight. Colby talked a mountain of shit on the run up to this fight, and the media talked a mountain of shit in favor of Leon Edwards. Very expected, you know what I mean? It comes down to politics, personality, and political correctness. So you can imagine that everybody was on the side of Leon Edwards going into this fight. I think the commentary was actually disgusting from DC, just over and over again glazing of Leon Edwards. In terms of what Colby Covington brought to the table last night, absolutely nothing. Absolutely pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. I don't know how to explain it. Nothing that he did last night was anywhere reminiscent of anything that he had ever done in the past before. Went in there, stood up like a fool for 3 rounds trying to strike with a striker, and you can't strike, bro. Please stop trying to do that. Whoever the fuck was advising you, or if they advised you to go to your normal game and take him down and try to work him with cardio and wrestling, and you ignored it and decided to stand and bang, it was sad. It was actually sad to watch, and I was wrong. I was 100% wrong. I thought Colby was going to go in there and be dominant and be constantly in his face, pushing and pushing and pushing. Nothing like that happened. Pathetic performance by Colby Covington. With all the shit that you spoke, with Donald Trump in the crowd, with the shit talk that you put out there before the fight, you went in there and did absolutely nothing. And then we had Leon Edwards, who stuffed maybe 2 takedowns, actually got his own 2 takedowns in there, and then threw a bunch of leg kicks. That was it. Not a dominant performance from a champion like DC was slobbering about. Absolutely nothing even close to that. And we get into this kind of MMA math situation again, where we talk about prospects coming up in the welterweight and what they would have done if they were in that octagon with that version of Leon Edwards last night. And I think a lot of the prospects coming up would have absolutely put it to Leon Edwards last night. He did not look good. He looked mediocre at best. The fact that Colby was so shit and he still couldn't capitalize, still couldn't put him out there. All the shit talk from the media going, whatever Colby said is going to fuel him so bad he's going to go in there and knock him out cold. Nothing like that happened. Didn't even come close to it. Bunch of leg kicks, 3 or 4 decent kind of grazing punches. That was it. That was it. He just kind of coasted through the fight. He knew that Colby wasn't going to offer anything after the first round. And I guess he was the happiest guy out there. He didn't have to do anything. So Colby lost the first 4 rounds, I reckon, easily. And in the 5th round, he managed to get a takedown, managed to mount him, and did absolutely nothing. There was no threat of a submission. There was no threat of a knockout by ground and pound. Nothing like that. Then he stood up and started doing the gesture of the belt as if he had won. Like, delusional. Absolutely delusional. Got on the mic, started talking about the first responders and Trump. Started talking about, I'm coming back in January, or I'm going to come back early next year. And fight who? And fight who? A lot of people were saying this is definitely Colby's last title shot because 1, he didn't deserve it, and 2, it's like you're after getting 3 and you've lost all 3. Forget about securing another title shot. I don't even think he's going to secure another fight. He might be given one, but what is the point? What is the point? What are you going to do? Are you going to mount another title run? I can't understand that. I can't see how Colby is going to continue in that welterweight division. He's 35 years old. There's been like 1 year, 2 year gaps between fights. He's talked shit about everybody. And like he said it himself, there is a bit of ring rust. Fine, that's fair enough. But that wasn't the performance that we needed, man, for your 3rd and final attempt at getting gold. And I hate saying it because he was my guy. But as simple as that, you got to call it the way you see it. Leon did enough last night to beat the worst version that ever stepped in the octagon of Colby Covington. So I don't know where that puts Leon in terms of welterweight champion. I know where it puts him in terms of DC and the shill media, because they hate Colby so much that they've doubled and tripled down on Leon being this absolute bad boy who just cannot be beaten. It is what it is. We'll see how it goes. So pathetic performances all around in the main event. Outlandish statements and ridiculous statements from Colby Covington about, first of all, thinking it was the easiest fight he ever had and that he's going to come back and mount an attack on the division next year. Then you had some more ridiculous and outlandish statements from the likes of DC and Joe Rogan talking about how elite Leon Edwards is. Pathetic. It was like, dude, you did nothing in that octagon last night that was elite. Then you had outlandish chirping and delusional takes online from the likes of Bilal Muhammad saying, bring me back, I'll make the welterweight division great again. Dude, stop. You're literally the most boring fighter in that division. If you do get the title shot against Leon, you know what? Your style might be enough to beat that version of Leon that was in the octagon last night. But we'll see how it goes. A lot of stuff to try cover in this video. Probably end up doing a couple of different videos as this week goes on. Definitely going to do a Sean Strickland one in terms of the hypocrisy on his side and the fact that he pretty much suffered his first loss as middleweight champion last night. Let me know your thoughts down below. Hit like, subscribe and share. I appreciate you. Cheers.